Welcome back, everyone. Is Charlie. Joker 2 has been out for a couple days, and as a lot of you have seen, there were a ton of trailer scenes, other behind the scenes that got removed from the theatrical cut. There were even multiple different endings, and most of the deleted scenes are Lady Gaga Harley Quinn scenes or involve her character, so you can decide whether or not you think they would have made the movie better. We'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. But number 10, starting with the alternate endings, there are a number of scenes featuring Harley Quinn at Joker's former apartment recreating the iconic scenes from the first movie towards the end of the movie. This first part is after she puts on her own Harley Quinn makeup and cuts her hair short again. She's decided to reject Arthur. It's meant to be after he talks to the jury saying that he wants to die now, like he wants it all to be over, so she's pissed off at him. You actually see her go through the transformation again, like put the makeup back on again, but this time you're seeing her actually cut her hair. The vibe of her singing, like the actual song, is way more sinister as well, just like the end of the first Joker movie when he's about to go on the Murray Gold show. You see her walk down the hallway of the apartment and get onto the elevator, turning around to face camera in slow motion, just like Joker did at the end of the first movie when he was getting ready to go on the show, to eventually kill Murray Gold and give his rant on television. So it was implied that Harley Quinn was going to do something really crazy at the end of this scene. Number 9, then on the steps, this is also part of one of the alternate endings, Harley Quinn seemingly turns the Joker into the police after his escape from the courtroom, like she actually turns him in, calls them in, while dancing down the steps the same way that he did at the end of the first movie. This would have been after she rejects him, like they have that similar conversation, then the cops show up and she starts dancing down the steps, revealing she lied about being pregnant, and then he gets taken back to Arkham. Reportedly, these alternate endings were also filmed as a smokescreen for the real ending. I don't know if that's necessarily true, or if they were just trying multiple different endings and they decided on the one that we saw in the theatrical cut, or if these alternate endings would have worked necessarily. If they were really meant to mislead people, you have to imagine that they filmed the scene of Joker being killed by the person who would become the real Joker inside a soundstage behind closed doors, so like nobody would have actually seen that. Number 8 is the theory that Harley Quinn or Lee is totally fake at a certain point in the movie, like eventually she's dead and he's just imagining her. Also, I think in the alternate version of this scene too, you could say that. And that's why Arthur didn't see her in the courtroom the final time when he broke character and went back to the Arthur persona saying that he wanted to die now. Right before the explosion, meaning that when he went back to the steps and was talking to Harley, that she would have also been fake in that version too. He would have just been imagining it. Sort of the same way in the end of the first movie where he realizes that he's been imagining all these different interactions with his neighbor. You also remember at a certain point he stopped taking his meds, making that whole thing possible. The idea is the meds were preventing him from imagining things like that. Notice in the alternate ending, you actually see the cops running past her, not acknowledging her at all. That would support the idea that she's actually not real. For those of you wondering if she was fake for the entire movie, like he was just imagining her at all points, I don't think that's true. I think she was actually a real person because there are a couple moments in the movie where you actually see other characters acknowledging her, interacting with her without Arthur being present. Probably the best example of this is when Harley Quinn interacts with Joker's lawyer and he's nowhere to be found and she turns and responds to what Harley Quinn is saying to her. But I do like the theory that she was actually dead at the very end of the movie when he's talking to her on the steps. Number 7, there's a deleted scene of Joker and Harley dancing down the steps of the courthouse together. This was in all the trailers. You saw a lot of people talking about this online. It's later in the movie after he fires his regular attorney, starts representing himself, and he has the first big outburst in court. After Harvey then finishes his prosecution, Arthur also says he's done presenting his case, and that's all, folks, making another Looney Tunes reference, kind of like the cartoon that plays before the movie. The whole idea is that he's going to be convicted, and he's not worried about it. The courtroom erupts with all the fans going crazy and cheering him like the Joker fans, expecting him to do something crazy before the trial is over. Then he and Harley Quinn walk out of the courtroom together. In the deleted version of this scene, they continue down the steps dancing amongst all their celebrating fans. Then he's put back into the police car and driven back to Arkham. What they do in the theatrical cut is go from them walking out of the courtroom in each other's arms to him directly inside the police car back to Arkham. Number 6, there's supposedly a third alternate ending. I haven't seen any footage of it, but it supposedly involves Lee being the one to kill Joker herself as part of her greater rejection of him. When he tells the jury and everyone on live TV watching the trial that Joker was never real and he can't do this anymore, he's done, he just wants to die now. I think this version of Harley Quinn was meant to imply she would eventually go on to become more like comic book Harley Quinn. In the way that Todd Phillips talked about the character, at least in the theatrical version of the movie, he made it sound like she was just like Arthur and that Harley Quinn was just a fantasy of hers. That's why on the steps she literally tells him a version of that their endgame was only ever a fantasy. They never would have run away together even if he had been acquitted of the crimes. There was no real endgame, no aftermath. It was all just lies of hers to uphold the fantasy she had of him while this was all going on. Number 5 WTF is the birth of Harvey Dent as Two-Face. He gets a version of his iconic origin story at the end of the theatrical cut when the courthouse is blown up by the angry fans trying to save Joker. Notice as he's crawling through the hole in the wall, the camera pans over to Harvey Dent, who's still alive, but his face is totally mangled and he's got this look of shock and horror. Had Todd Phillips intended for this movie to continue with other sequels and spin-offs, which it sounds like he did not, we would have presumably seen Harvey Dent as Two-Face in the third movie or in some other spin-off, but that's not the case. Like, they don't have any actual spin-offs planned for this movie or any other sequels. Number 4, building on that, Todd Phillips said he always intended for this movie to be his last movie in the DC universe. So he always planned for it to be what you actually saw on screen, a musical basically in a relitigation of the first movie with Arthur ultimately rejecting the Joker, and then all Joker fans rejecting Arthur and ultimately killing him, closing the book on this universe. Number 3 is actually a real-life WTF. This is a little bit funny in a dark kind of way. I posted this on my Twitter, but it was a fan interaction with James Gunn. Like, he's been answering all kinds of questions because of the upcoming Superman movie and just a lot of stuff that's happening the next couple years with DC in general because he's in charge of all the DC stuff. The fan was asking him why Joker 2 didn't have the DC Studios logo at the beginning of the movie like you would normally expect from a DC movie, and James Gunn replied that it wasn't meant to be a DC Studios movie. A lot of people were taking this as if he was slyly dissing the movie, like James Gunn was dissing the movie, like, don't put that evil on me. But he is actually saying that he had nothing to do with the movie, like James Gunn was hired after they started making Joker 2. All the recent DC movies that had come out the past 2 years or so were put into production before James Gunn was hired. So he didn't approve any of them or have any real creative control that was able to significantly change the movies, with a very few exceptions. Like the Flash movie is probably the best example of him coming in late in the game after the movie was pretty much done and then making some changes. When it comes to the Flash movie, though, that was mostly to change the ending because originally the Flash movie was created by a previous administration that was running DC and Warner Brothers movies, and they'd planned for more Henry Cavill Superman, Man of Steel sequels, and more Justice League movies with the Snyderverse of characters, like a whole completely different future going forward for like 10 years worth of DCEU. James Gunn came on and wanted to reboot everything, so the original ending for the Flash movie wouldn't have made sense. But when it comes to a movie like Joker 2, this is a little bit different. Todd Phillips specifically said that the studio left him alone and let him have total creative control over the movie, so James Gunn really didn't have any connection with Joker 2. And on top of that, if you remember, the first Joker movie and this movie, like both movies were the same in terms of the title treatment, the way they credited DC Comics. Both of them have no DC logo of any kind at the beginning of the movie. In both of the movies, only have a credit at the end saying, based on characters from DC, and that's it. That's the only text or logo in the movie connecting any of these Joker franchise films to DC Comics. The reason why they said they did it this way is because both of the Joker movies were developed outside of DC, even the previous administration at DC before James Gunn was hired, because the first Joker movie was made many years ago from a much previous administration, even before David Zaslav, who everybody hates, was hired on. So it was a completely separate part of the studio that does like the regular Warner Brothers non-DC movies doing the Joker Todd Phillips movies. So the movie was literally meant to be completely off in its own little universe with no connections to the DC universe ever, which is part of the reason why they let Todd Phillips be so crazy and so different with the characters. The only problem I think with that is that a lot of fans just saw the Joker character and they're like, oh, Joker, Batman characters, this is going to connect with other Batman stuff in the future. But at least behind the scenes, at the studio level, they never intended on connecting this with any Batman franchise of any kind. Number 2 WTF, the Looney Tunes cartoon that plays at the beginning of the movie tells the entire story of the movie before the actual movie plays. This is like a big spoiler warning, like when you go back and you rewatch the movie a second time, if you actually want to watch the movie a second time, most of you probably will not bother to watch it a second time. But it's meant to be a Looney Tunes style parody cartoon, because we're talking Warner Brothers here, they own the Looney Tunes. Back in the day, they also used to attach Looney Tunes style cartoons ahead of movies in theaters like this, normally anyway, like any kind of movie. But the cartoon was also meant to depict Joker's fantasy that he talks about having during the movie about Murray Gold's show being his show, like it was Joker's show in his mind. The cartoon shows you all the themes that they cover throughout the movie, his alternate Joker persona trying to fight him having to figure out who the real persona is Arthur the real person, is Joker the real person, until ultimately he's killed in jail, which is basically how the cartoon ends. I think this is also evidence that at the end of the movie, the guards also set Arthur up so that the other version of the person that will become the Joker kills him. Like, they organized that, and there was no visitor that came to see him, causing him to leave where that other inmate was able to stab him. Then probably the number one WTF here is what the guards do to Joker at the end of the movie. Now, we're talking about the literal text of the movie here. Some people kind of miss the context because of the way they cut the scene together, like they kind of quickly brush past it, so you're not totally sure what happens, but I think they show you enough to imply what really happened. Arthur returns from prison in his Joker makeup, riding high because he's just told the jury and the judge off, but the guards heard him making fun of them on live TV at the trial. They haul him to a secluded, separate part of the prison, strip him of all his clothes inside a shower, then proceed to violently sexually assault him, like in the graphic prison sense when people make references to what happens in prison showers. That's probably the least objectionable way that I can explain it without YouTube coming after my video. Then they put him back in his clothes and throw him back into solitary confinement. Now, a lot of people questioning like what actually happened when they were in the shower, but if you look at his face here, it looks like any humanity that he had before this was completely stripped out of it, like he lost any sense of humanity. And it's after this, when he goes back to the trial, that he breaks down and goes back to his Arthur persona saying, I can't do this anymore. No more. This is done. No more Joker. I want to die right now. So what they're implying is that it was the violent sexual assault that really turned him around on wanting to be Joker. Like, that's it. No more Joker. It's done. Generally a super messed up scene in a very messed up movie, but everybody just post all your reactions in the comments below. Like I said, there are no plans to continue this franchise after this. I think that's why James Gunn just kind of let it be off on its own. Like, he didn't try to worm his way in and make a whole bunch of changes. Also, reportedly, the reason why the studio let Todd Phillips do this with the movie just in general, like let him do his own thing, is because they wanted to appease him because he made them so much money from the first movie. But it does sound like behind the scenes, a lot of people at the studio were not happy with the movie itself, but they ultimately, just based on the way the contracts were written, had to let him do whatever he wanted to do with it. In better news, better Batman things, The Penguin Episode 3 is happening tonight. I will do my video for it after it releases, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss it. It is one of the few Batman-related things that people have actually really enjoyed recently. Everybody click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for my Joker 2 ending video to explain what's going on with that alternate version of the Joker. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.